Hey everyone, and welcome back once again to Newegg TV. My name is Paul, and we have JJ in the studio one more time. How's it going, JJ?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Well, thank you for being here, and thanks for bringing this hardware that you're sharing with us today because, well, you guys might have already seen some of our videos that we've posted. JJ's come along. He's brought a ton of Z87 stuff. Z87, of course, the new chipset that goes along with the new 1150 socket for Intel's new platform for their 4th generation core processors, a.k.a. Haswell. Now, we've taken a close-up look at a lot of the motherboards already, and we've talked about a lot of the features, but what we're going to get into now is actually demonstrating some of those features for you guys. So today's video is going to be a UEFI demonstration. We're going to start off with the UEFI that's on the mainstream board. We got that set up right now. This should apply, would this one apply to the mainstream and the Tough series?
Yeah, actually, as a whole, every feature that we're going to be highlighting on is going to be present in all ASUS Z87 series motherboards. Okay. So that's going to be the main series motherboards, which are the new color ID gold. Then you're going to also apply it to the Tough series, so the Sabertooth Z87, the Griffin Z87. You're also going to cover the WS series boards and ROG. But at the end of this video, we're also going to extend upon that and also touch on some exclusive UEFI options that are only available on ROG motherboards.
All right, so we'll be switching up midway through, but for now we're going to start talking about the new UEFI. Now, ASUS was one of the first to bring the UEFI option to the table back in the Ivy Bridge days. And
well, actually, P67 is actually when we launched it.
P67, Sandy Bridge days.
Yeah.
Please forgive me. So P67 on with Z68, and then of course Z77, which has been around for quite some time now. Now with Z87, you guys have pretty much tried to go above and beyond, tried to include more options. We're looking at the easy mode screen right now. So let's start here. As far as the easy mode screen, what sort of changes have you guys made here so that anyone who gets into the UEFI can sort of have a quick view at what's going on and easily access some of their most frequently accessed functions?
We've actually made a number of changes, and before I jump on that, I do want to make the note that one of the most important things that we continue to strive for and we've continued to work on as we've evolved the UEFI from when we originally phased it into our motherboards is just the overall not only layout, but the performance and the functionality of the UEFI. At the end of the day, you know, this is an enthusiast-oriented environment. It's for somebody that wants to be able to have that direct kind of hardware, quote-unquote, level control, even though technically it's still firmware, it's a form of software. And be able to have it work for you in the way that you want it to be, responsively, intuitively, with a great deal of functionality. So we've kept that. You know, if you've consistently looked at our UEFI, it's fast, it's fluid, it's responsive, it feels good. You keep things that make sense in terms of adding maybe some additional points of functionality, but also keeping the things that you want, such as manual key and entry, you know, and good layout. And we're definitely maintaining a lot of those things that we know that users right now appreciate within the current design. So more so, it's, as you touched on, about where can we add in extra design points that really actually provide a benefit. They're not necessarily gimmicks, but they're actually providing you something that you go, wow, I can realistically use this and it can benefit me in how I'm tweaking, tuning, or working with my system. So as you noted, we first got here our easy mode screen, which you can see as a whole, we've actually made a little bit of an ID change. We've kind of freshened it up a little bit, gone with a little bit lighter look to the overall layout, and we've also done some resolution optimization so it scales better on actually larger screens as well. Where sometimes in the past you actually might have seen that you might have gotten a little bit of bordering around the UEFI. So for you guys that are maybe using, you know, 24, 27, even 30-inch panels, or even higher resolution panels, you should see better scaling across that. So that's a kind of behind-the-scenes change that's in place that you won't immediately notice, but if you've worked with the UEFI in the past, you'll see that as a benefit. All right. So if we're taking a look here, a couple of the new options that we're going to have sprinkled out might not be immediately visible to you. But Paul, I think you've got the mouse right over there. So if you can go ahead and maybe track over first to the DRAM section. So you can see right here, we've gone ahead and added this information where you have the DRAM, you have the density, and then you have the frequency at what the memory is running at. That's great. Now, one of the most common things that we got feedback from users on is, hey, I didn't realize that I needed to actually set Xmp values. Now, there's some of you guys out there that might comment like, what? I didn't. Of course, you have to go into the advanced section, go into your overclocking parameters and define Xmp, but there's a lot of users out there that sometimes don't know this or forget to do it. And if you don't inherently know that you need to go into the advanced section, then we wanted to try to provide an easier way to allow you to have essentially the enablement of Xmp. Because there are people that don't even necessarily overclock their system, but the majority of the memory that they're purchasing does have an Xmp profile. So we want them to be able to easily be able to access that functionality. So as you can see here, we now have a one-click button function for Xmp. These modules that we're currently using, which are Kingston Beast-oriented kits, some great high-performance memory modules, actually have two profiles. They have a 2133, and then they have a secondary 1866. So if we go ahead and pick profile 1, it'll go ahead and ask you if you want to apply that. It'll make a quick adjustment, and then from there, it's now gone ahead and applied that for you. So a very simple, easy way to now more intuitively be able to set your Xmp profile, but without having to know, hey, I might need to go into more advanced layers of the UEFI to actually be able to implement this. For us that are dyed-in-the-wool veterans, that doesn't seem like a big change. But even for people that just want an easier way to do it, now you can do it just right from the easy mode environment.
And getting into a UEFI, or previously known as BIOS, that was another thing we kind of wanted to point out. It's now called the UEFI, but some people are still familiar with that terminology. But it's one of the more difficult to get into features of a computer. It doesn't have quite that usability like an operating system is designed for. But this sort of thing will easily allow you to set your memory to the appropriate timings just with a click of a button. And you don't even have to jump into the advanced mode. Timings are all listed right there. Voltage is listed right there. And you're pretty much good to go.
So a really nice functionality update. Now to go along with that as well, one of the key things that we also know that people look to change is their fan controls, right? They maybe just want to quiet down their system. Now we offer an outstanding set of software because we have hardware level design that gives us great control over the headers. We give you 3-pin and 4-pin support, but sometimes users, maybe they don't want to use the software, maybe they don't want to configure it and they want to go in the UEFI. So when you go into the advanced mode, we've given you extensive levels of adjustment for each fan header. But once again, if you don't necessarily need to go there, right, you can now more quickly just go over to the fan section, and we now have optioned in quick profile support options. So if I just want to go ahead and set that to silent, I can go ahead and set it to silent or standard or turbo. So turbo actually should be rephrased. This is a preliminary BIOS that we're showing you, or UEFI, and we should probably be changing that to performance instead. And manual will actually set a manual target value, which will be linked into the advanced section, and it lets you know that you need to go into the advanced section because you're going to have the ability to go ahead and define your maximum target temperature, your minimum target temperature, and when you want the actual fans to adjust. So you get a lot more granularity at how you can have your fans respond in terms of the thermal characteristics for your system. But because of course that requires more manual entry, that has to be done in the advanced mode environment. So for right now, we can just go ahead and reset them back to standard, but you can see once again, it's going to give you a great level of flexibility being able to define options for your fan headers. And you can click the expand tab to go ahead and see that gives you extensive control for every single one of the headers on the board. So another really nice touch that we've gone ahead and weaved in here, making the easy mode that much more functional.
Now the default values we're seeing here, is this pretty much going to give you a CPU fan and then another setting for the rest of the fans connected?
Correct, yeah. Okay. So the CPU and the CPU optional fan are linked into one standard value, and that would work for both 3-pin and 4-pin fans, and the same thing. Chassis fan headers then have each of their own individual settings.
Very nice.
So very impressive. System performance here, these are pretty much just linked in options to be able to easily modify system performance. So default is stock operation. With optimal, it's essentially accessing the TPU profile that we have on the onboard TPU switch. Now, if you didn't adjust your TPU switch and you've got your system all closed up, then you don't want to necessarily lose that immediate value being able to quickly and easily overclock your system. So you could just click the optimal button, and optimal will actually enable our TPU profile overclock. So you could go ahead and have something like a 4.25 gigahertz overclock with just the click of that button.
So that would actually override the physical switch on the board?
It wouldn't necessarily override it because by default it's in the off position. So it's more so instead of having to switch that, right, you could be in the UEFI.
Okay.
You know, our perception point is that for something like a basic quick overclock profile, it should exist in each one of the layers that the user could potentially use it within, right? Hardware switches are good, but the reality is none of you guys really run your system outside of a chassis. So they really serve zero value. So sometimes they're put on there for almost more of a marketing specification, and we really rather prefer putting design implementations that benefit you guys anytime that you use your system. So from that perspective, this is going to always provide you value because you could always have access to it. And if you're somebody that doesn't even use the UEFI, you'll have actually these same two options within the operating system. So you'll always be able to take advantage of a quick and easy way to overclock your system.
And then power saving would maybe give you a slight underclock.
No,
and,
actually no underclock would occur. It will just provide an undervolt to the CPU, but it won't modify performance. So this is great for users that are maybe looking to run stock, all right? They don't want to lose any performance, but maybe they want to have a little bit lower temperatures, a little bit better power consumption. So you're going to have two different options in terms of that. You can go with stock level operation, you can go with slightly enhanced performance-oriented operation, or you can go for more power optimization, extending CPU lifespan, bring down your thermals a little bit. So one-click options to do that. We, of course, still maintain all our options in terms of drag and drop boot priority options, where you can go ahead and swing those out to assign which one you would rather have be your preferred boot.
This was one of my favorite implementations with the original new UEFI that you brought. This is one of the most frequently accessed, in my personal opinion, things that you need to get into the I almost want to say BIOS again, into the UEFI to switch your boot device priority. Right there, it's a quick and easy drag and drop.
We have added this new option here that gives you immediate SATA information, so you can see all the devices you have connected. Once again, you don't need to go into the advanced section. You can just immediately highlight, and I know, hey, I've got my Blu-ray combo drive installed, I've got two awesome HyperX SSDs installed, and I know which ports they're on, so I can actually have that immediate confirmation knowing, hey, that's already in my system, and I've got that adjusted. So another new introduction option that we have here. And then we also have, we always had our shortcuts that we had, but now we actually give you a button so that you can know that it's there. Now the cool part that we have is that we've made some modifications the way this shortcut system works, but we're going to show that in advanced mode. But this allows you to know that at this point, once you make modifications to this, you're going to have a great and easy way to jump to any part of the UEFI without actually having to navigate to those pages. So that's a really cool plus point as well.
So that's a configurable list, and we'll get back to that.
Correct. So from there, let's actually go ahead and jump into the advanced mode, because that's going to cover most of what we have in the easy mode interface. So from here, you can see we've gone to our standard main page. Overall, it doesn't really change too much. It's just overall giving you the system information, specifics on the MAI firmware, your UEFI revision, and things along those lines. One really cool option, though, that we worked on for quite some time that we think is going to be really something that overclockers and tweakers appreciate is the quick note function.
Quick note. There we go.
So if you take a look at this, I put in a little message previously to Paul, and it says, hey, hello, Paul, how are you doing? You will need to apply a manual vid of 1.2 volts to achieve 4.6 gigahertz.
Good advice.
So normally, of course, you wouldn't need to leave these kind of notes for people, but this is just showing you an example. If you go ahead and clear all, you can see that I can go ahead and now type, and I go, was able to complete an overclock of 4.8 gigahertz with 1.275, right? And you can go ahead and just add in your information, or you could also put I was unsuccessful. You could go ahead and tab down and say tried 4.8 gigahertz at 1.20 volts, failed, right? Okay. Tried, 4.8, not 2.8, 4.8 gigahertz, 1.225, right, volts, partial stability, right, or something, along those lines. You can go ahead and just clear that out. So you can see the great thing is here is you're going to actually have now an integrated way that you can keep information that is specific to you, and it's going to persistently be there, and you're going to always have a great way of being able to define information, whether it's about your tweaking to your platform, maybe certain options you want to remember that you might have adjusted, or things that you want to just keep in mind. So we feel a really nice option at just being able to add real functionality and value to the UEFI environment. Now with that, you're going to also see, if we go over to the last modified section, this is another new thing which is really nice. You can see that we have a persistent history log of all the different options that you've been making changes to. So you can see I made some changes where we gone ahead and set different frequency values, different voltages, timings from the, of course, the application of the XMP. SATA mode was changed from RAID to ACHI. We enabled the fast boot functionality, post delay. All these little switches that you're changing, you can now have a persistent modification table to know, hey, what did I actually change, before I exit out of my UEFI? And, if you want to even save that information, maybe you're sending it to a friend and you say, hey, you want to do these and these and these things, you can go ahead and quickly do that, and you can even export it to your flash drive.
It's a great way for overclockers to sort of keep a log of what they're proceeding with as they try different things with their system, and then you can share that with other friends. I imagine once you get it saved to USB, posted on a forum, something like that, help share with other users the experiences you've had and maybe help them along with their overclocking.
Of course, and that also then even ties in with our previous option that we've always had now, which is the F12 print screen, where of course you can capture as a screenshot any page of the UEFI. Just plug in your flash drive, you hit the F12 screen, and if I go ahead and hit it right now, it tells me I don't have, of course, a flash drive connected. But if it did, it would save it in a bitmap file, and bam, I'd be good to go. So some really cool functionality that we've introduced with the quick note and the last modification.
Very nice.
So from there, if we take a look at my favorites, you're going to see this is a really cool option because essentially it's your own definable kind of frequently accessed section to the UEFI. So the great part about it is if, let's say, I want to go over to AI Tweaker, right? And maybe I want always AI Tweaker because I love to go in there and make different changes. I know over the next couple of weeks I'll be tuning my system, trying different values out. I can go ahead and hit the F4 key and I can add it to that page. So if you want to go ahead and click on it, or we press enter on our keyboard, we'd be good to go. So jump back over to my favorites and you can now see I have that section available to me, and we can go in further. So let's say maybe we go to advanced. One of the most common things that we change is maybe ACI. If you head back over, set operation, maybe you want to set that. You could also go ahead and we can do F4, right? And we could add that to my favorites page also. So you can jump back over and you can see now, you're going to have quick and easy ways where, hey, I want to go ahead and set that to AHCI, right? So you won't have to keep jumping into these navigation parts of the UEFI to be able to quickly access them. In the same way, we can go ahead and we can go back over, and I can go here and let's say I want to add that to my shortcut option. Once again, I could go to F4 and I could add that. Maybe I want to go ahead and have, my primary CPU fan control. Maybe I want to be able to go ahead and adjust that quickly, right? So I can do F4 and I could also add that to a shortcut. I can, go in pretty much any one of these sections, easy flash portion, right? So these are all great because now I can go ahead and go to F3. And you can see now in F3, I can instantly jump to any one of those portions. If I want to jump to the monitor section, I want to go ahead and jump to the fan control settings, it immediately allows me to jump. A much easier way to just be able to work with the UEFI and access the portions that really are just relevant to you and how you decide that you want to work with your platform.
You pretty much have two ways to do that. You can either jump to my favorites and set that list up, or you can go to the shortcuts option as well, and that will actually take you to that specific place within the UEFI.
Correct. So, it pretty much just comes down to what's going to work best for you at how you want to be able to tweak and tune and define your system.
Very nice.
So we can go ahead and just reload defaults here. And if we jump in over here into the AI Tweaker section, you're going to see that there's a number of different options, but of course we keep a lot of the nice key target information right here. So if we're going to go ahead and make changes, so such as we're going to overclock, we have the integrated information real time, so you can see that as those adjustments are occurring, it's doing all the calculation for you to allow you to know what's the target temperature, what's the target frequency. If you made adjustments to BCLK, it would make adjustments to the DRAM. So you pretty much know what your outcomes are going to be here before you go ahead and start to finalize on all these details. You get a sense of, okay, that's what I'm shooting for, and I know that that's already what's being modified.
At this point, I also want to mention that we are going to be doing an overclocking demonstration as well. So I know we just showed you some brief tools right here, but if you guys are interested in overclocking specifically, check that out. That video will also be on our YouTube channel.
Yes. So we also have an option that we've had previously, but we've refined, and you can see it's right here. It's called OC Tuner. And with OC Tuner, this is essentially like a hardware method to our more advanced four-way optimization technology, which does real-time automated overclocking. So what it allows you to do here from a pure hardware environment is it attempts to auto-tune your system specific to your CPU and your cooling, and tries to do some tweaking here, and you can adjust this now to only have it doing overclocking using the actual multiplier, the CPU ratio, or doing the BCLK. So it allows you kind of a quick hardware-oriented method to kind of do some little bit more advanced overclocking versus the basic profile options that we have for the TPU, whether it's on that TPU switch or it's the optimal button inside the easy mode environment.
BCLK, that is actually something that previously has been available with the X79 Sandy Bridge E platform, and that is now also available with Haswell?
Correct. To clarify, BCLK was previously also available on Ivy Bridge. And the main difference is that now you have the inclusion of the CPU strap.
The strap, yes.
But the strap also technically is a form of modifying the system bus, but it's a delinked. So you'll have both a strap option and BCLK option.
Okay.
So you could set like a 125 strap, but then also still be able to modify the BCLK on top of the strap. Okay. So some nice improvements there. From there, the rest of the stuff is going to be pretty familiar to most of you. We're going to have a couple of different ranges of options, such as we've maintained some classic options that most of you are very familiar with, such as manual and offset, but you'll see there's a new and adaptive mode that's also part of the new UEFI, and that'll be covered more in depth when we cover the automated overclocking technology that we have in four-way optimization, as well as our manual overclocking demo. Okay. So when we moved over to advanced, you're going to see right here that we have something that's pretty cool. Oh, I can delete this.
You can change the names.
Correct. And so, you know, you could, we wouldn't change it for that, but maybe we wanted to go ahead and, you know, rename the primary volume right here to this is going to be, you know, Windows 8 primary boot, or you know, whatever you want. It doesn't matter. The great thing is you're going to have the ability to rename every single one of these SATA ports so that you have an easier way of referencing what that drive is actually doing. So this is a great option, especially for people that have complex storage configurations. You know, I know for me, like in one of my systems, actually I have 3 2-terabyte drives, and they're all from the same exact vendor, right? And so sometimes when you have the same exact drives, you might not know which one is on which SATA port and what might be on what, right? Maybe you have a large archive of photographs and video on one drive. Maybe the other one is all your Steam library, right, for all your games. And maybe the other one is a backup of your SSD RAID configuration, right? So, you know, it's nice now that in this environment, you would always be able to label the information per each one of your drives and know which drive you're modifying and working with.
So right here you have the labels for each SATA connector. Those would correspond with the labels that are on the board. So if you're plugging in your drives, maybe make a quick note of that, and then you can come in here and change them so you know exactly what's plugged in where.
Correct, yep. And you could even, you know, help to note, you know, if you have multiple drives that are even the same drive of the RAID, like we have in this configuration, I could go ahead and I could label that as well, right? So I could go in and I could be going in this one also and do, you know, Windows 8 primary boot. Keep our naming consistent. And that could be, primary boot, and that could be 2, right? And that could be, you know, I could rename that and I could call it primary boot 1, right? So I know that that's 1 and 2 and they're required, right, for that RAID. Or you can name it whatever you want. But overall, you know, this is also showing you that I think where our commitment is at is not to just add something that's, you know, quote unquote, looks good, right? It's really about trying to give you guys more functionality, more versatility to things that you're going to want to use and you're going to appreciate. Because one of the things that people don't realize is that it's very, very, very complex and complicated to make changes to the UEFI, because the UEFI is attached to every single aspect of operation, even including software. So sometimes even adding very basic functions like this can affect the overclockability, the compatibility, our auto rules, which make auto optimizations based on adjustments that you might make to your system. So every single one of these things, it's like a domino effect, and you have to be very careful about ensuring that the rest all falls in place and keeps the best user experience possible.
Do you also have like a limited amount of space to work with that you need to fit all of this code within?
Yeah, definitely. There is limitations to the physical amount of space that we have to be able to execute changes in. And there's a there's also a consideration on whether or not it makes sense to put that level of adjustment or change within there, if it can be maybe better executed or offer better functionality within the operating system environment. So those are all all balances and points that we have to keep in mind.
All right.
So from here you can see into the monitors, we have our whole set of all the fan controls, which are super extensive. Really, we feel we offer the best controls in the industry, and you can see that per each one of these headers you can go in and you can go ahead and mattify the profiles, or I can jump in and, like I said, I can go ahead and set manual profile parameters, right, so that I can go ahead and even have more defined performance variables for how I want to respond to the thermal characteristics for my system.
Now, how would these fan controls, would these be supplemental, sort of 2 separate options? Because you also have the Fan Expert 2 option in AI Suite. Is this sort of that you could do it here or you can do it there?
Yeah, it would be do it here or do it there, but Fan Expert 2 actually even allows for more advanced levels of controls that are too inherently complicated to try to actually put into the UEFI environment, such as in the, tied into the operating system. We even give you granularity at how to define ramping. So you can define how fast it ramps between, let's say, the minimum duty cycle of 20% and then the maximum duty cycle of 100%. And that's important. Why? Because if you don't control that and it does the ramping very fast, the fan's essentially going to go woo, right, really quickly.
It can be kind of distracting.
Right? As versus if you want to go really slow, right, you're just going to hear a small kind of curve of that fan moving all the way up, and of course it's going to sound louder, but it won't be as abrupt. So that's even kind of the level of control that we give you. Plus you can do more fixed points where you have multiple delta points that it can respond, like in a curve or like a linear curve that you have flexibility for. Plus you can do like manual gradients, a lot of really, really impressive levels of functionality, or you can just run the automated auto overclocking and just go with defined values that will control all the fans at one time. So definitely I'd say it's one or the other, but the great thing is you have an extensive level of control in either environment, and that's going to be accessible to you on all these ASUS series motherboards, regardless of whether it's the channel, ROG, TUF, or WS.
And in case you guys are wondering what exactly we're talking about, the AI Suite 3 will also be a video that we're doing here, so check that out if you want to see all of the software control options that are available from within the operating system.
Correct. And rounding it out here, we just got a couple of last options that are important for some of you guys that are taking advantage of native UEFI Windows installations, because by default, if you complete a Windows install, it's not even using a motherboard that has UEFI, it's not a native UEFI installation. You actually have to select that as a bootable configuration environment. If you do that, though, you can take advantage of special features such as fast boot, secure boot, and other optimized performance technologies that are part of the newer generation of operating systems. And we fully support those through special options like fast boot or hardware-based fast boot, which can be enabled. You can do below state time, and you can do things like that. In your experience, I think you've worked with a couple of our boards. You can see with SSD-based solutions, we can actually be booting from a cold post to the desktop sometimes within a period of about like 3 seconds. It's very, very, very quick.
It's pretty amazing. In just a rough ballpark, going with these options for booting in Windows 8 versus not using them, like what kind of a time difference do you think that would make?
It can be pretty dramatic. If you use all the advanced options and you do a native UEFI with a modern generation SATA 60 SSD, like I said, your post to boot time would generally be somewhere about, I'd say about 4 to about 6 seconds. And that non-environment with the same SSD, you're maybe looking at about 9 to about 13 seconds.
Okay.
So still both are very fast, and we do a lot of optimization to enhance that, but you can even get faster results. Plus you get supplemental security benefits and other aspects that a non-native UEFI install is not going to be able to provide to you.
Okay.
So that rounds out a lot of the options you're going to see here, but we feel that, tied in with just, of course, some of the other option tools that you have, such as an easy OC profile to be able to store and define your overclocks, as well as real-time SPD information for all your memory modules, such as the Kingston HyperX Beast kits that we have here. You can see all that information. Really helps to round out a strong UEFI that gives you a whole bunch of functionality and versatility. And if we go back here, if you want to click on your last modified, once again we can see that as we've continued to make changes, we have that information available to us. So I think that wraps up most of what we wanted to cover on the UEFI here.
Yeah, so once again, guys, these features that we're showing here are going to be universal across the entire set of ASUS motherboards that are available on the Z87 platform. But we also have some more enthusiast-grade options that are available with the ROG series of motherboards.
Correct.
So we're going to switch out this system real quick, and we'll be right back to show you some of those. So we've swapped systems out. We're now using an ROG board, and we have the ROG UEFI, so we're going to give a little bit of some special features for the ROG team.
Correct. So everything that we covered in the initial part of this video in terms of all the functions like the quick note feature, the easy options, the last modified table, the new adjustments, and my favorite, all those features are going to be consistently present here as well, but we're also going to be adding some, as you noted, specific features that are exclusive to the ROG series of motherboards. So when we first take a look at the first page, you're going to see one thing that you might immediately kind of see that there's a difference on.
Got an animation right there.
Correct, there's an animation. So this is pretty much kind of the ROG Pulse that we've kind of integrated in there. So it's a little bit more focused towards the enthusiast community. Sometimes when you tend to be pushing the system, you're pushing it towards the limits, whether you might be on water, you could even be on air, especially if you're optimizing and tuning secondary and third stage timings for DRAM. You can sometimes have a lockup that occurs after the system's actually gone through what's called its MRC post. So when the system's actually coming back after you've maybe make tweaks in certain settings, you could actually have a midway crash, but you might not necessarily know that, or you could walk away from the system, come back to it. So it's just kind of an immediate way to always know that the system is actually still polling, it's still working, it's still functional. So you can actually turn it off though. It doesn't change the overall functionality of the performance of the UEFI, whether it's on or off, but for you guys that want to be able to have just a quick immediate visual way to know the system is still responding, it's a nice little touch that we've added in there.
I was just going to say it's shiny, but I guess it also adds some functionality like you were saying.
I like shiny as well, so I think that works. So outside of that, of course, we maintain, specialized presets. Now, for the Deluxe Series motherboard, as well as for the Maximus 6 Extreme, we've made some very special hardware changes. We're not going to necessarily divulge the secret sauce that we have on a hardware design scale, but we've been actually able to achieve a 200 BCLK exclusively on these two boards.
Oh, wow.
Technically, in terms of the specification profile that we have, this shouldn't be technically possible, but because of some really cool innovation that we have on the hardware design, we've been able to go ahead and set this up. So you have some really nice profiles for guys that want to be able to have more flexibility. Now, with this platform, if you remember, we have the strap, and we also have the excuse me, the BCLK available to us. So you're going to have just more granularity of being able to mess around with DRAM dividers specific with these options.
Okay.
And we also then have a gamer's profile, which takes advantage of per-core tuning. So we're going to have a more aggressive overclock, but we're also going to be able to have a single-threaded overclock to be able to benefit sometimes older game titles where you can go ahead and have an increase in performance from higher frequency on single threads.
Okay.
Okay. So from there, we can go ahead and move down, and you're going to see that there's going to be some specialized options actually within DRAM timing control. So if we head over here, we have what's called memory presets, and this is one of the really big differentiation points that we have on the ROG series of motherboards, that you have an extensive level of DRAM profiles that are all phased in here for different voltages, different timings, different frequencies. So our team has gone through and worked extensively with all the top IC vendors, and we pretty much go through and auto profile all these frequencies, these timings, and these tables, so that what you can do is once you confirm the information as far as which DIMM and which IC you're going to be running on your board, you can go in there, pop that in there, have the board auto-negotiate, set all those parameters for you so you can achieve those clocks. It makes it significantly easier when you know kind of that this information is available to you, and you don't have to kind of do the research as far as which variables I might need to adjust or tweak or tune to be able to take advantage of those higher frequencies if I know the original kit that I have.
So how would this compare to, like, for example, Xmp profiles? Are these specific profiles for the board?
Well, there's specific profiles that we've tuned to our hardware design, but they're going to be able to take advantage, because an Xmp profile is just taking the rated specification that the vendors have rated those memory modules for. But of course, as we know, there's always additional margin that sometimes is present, especially in higher end kits that are on the market. So very common for stuff that's 2133, 2400, 2600, 2800 kits is you're going to have the flexibility of defining greater speeds, tighter timings, different variables along those lines, but they might require adjustments to maybe third stage timings, or maybe to other aspects that are as part of the UEFI that can be configurable, but not everybody's going to have that knowledge set, right? So once I find out the specification in terms of the module that I'm using here, I can just go in, punch that in, and we'll go ahead and make those adjustments for you. So we feel this is a very special option, really targeted towards the guys that are looking for maximum tweaking tuning ability. It's a really nice touch.
Now, as these all seem to be very high-end configurations that we have here, as new memory comes to the market, would you be able to plug in additional profiles in the
and
future?
that's one of the things, of course, always ROG and even ASUS as a whole prides itself on, is that we have long-term committed support to our UEFI, right? I mean, if you take a look at historically our boards, it's not uncommon that at the end of a year we can have, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, UEFI releases where we're continually fine-tuning, improving performance, and the interoperability and compatibility with different kits that come to the market.
Awesome, excellent feature.
So if we back out of that, of course, you're going to see all those extensive options like we would normally expect. Really just an extensive degree of tweakability to go in there. And this is going to be more critical for most users. They're not going to need to go in there and define this. They can apply XMP, or they can make adjustment just of the primary options. And we have a very, very strong set of auto rules that are going to go in and auto manipulate those values for you.
Okay.
So from there, we can go ahead and head over into our tool section, and in our tool sections we're going to have a couple of more specialized functions. So the really big one right here is we have secure erase. So for the ROG community, they tend to be the guys that embrace performance before anybody else. So they were some of the earliest adopters for SSDs, and they're also the guys that are most critical at making sure that performance always stays at its kind of highest level. And so for that, we've gone ahead and implemented secure erase, which is a great option, because as you know, with SSDs, the more you utilize them under especially heavy load configurations, you're going to have degradation that occurs over time. Now, if you're doing things like RAID, there's sometimes the variability on whether the controller, whether the driver you're utilizing supports trim and pass-through. Not every vendor makes an SSD toolbox. You can use third-party programs like Parted Magic, and you can boot into a Linux environment and run it, but then you have variabilities as far as how it's initialized and how it's detected. This just makes the process a whole lot easier. You don't have to worry about it. You can just make sure and image your hard drive beforehand, and make sure you know that hopefully when you first set it up, you have an idea in terms of what the peak performance is, but you can always just then go into the secure erase environment, hit it, secure erase it, re-image your drive back, and you can make sure you have 100% of the performance. The big thing is that ultimately it's just simplified the solution by a very high degree. You're not going to have to worry about dealing with any other supplemental applications. You just boot straight into it, and you can go ahead and erase your drive.
Nice. So a great way to return your SSD to its original performance.
Correct. From there, we're also going to go ahead and have the OC panel configuration parameters. So as you remember, we highlighted the OC panel, which is a special accessory that comes included with the board. And now on ROG as a whole, because the OC panel support on any ROG board, there's going to be specialized options you can go ahead and define in here in terms of quick overclock profiles that'll be linked to that button in the front of the actual OC panel itself. So you can go ahead and define what your overclock parameter can be, and then you can load that at the click of a button. So it's nice in terms of maybe you want to keep your system at an idle frequency, get better power consumption, better efficiency, but when you want to take advantage of improved performance, you can hit that button, load that profile, and dynamically overclock the system.
Nice. And we have the OC panel currently installed right at the front of the system. So if you did have it in that configuration, the buttons on the front would be accessible to switch between the profiles?
Correct, yeah. And you're going to have different options depending on the configuration parameters that you're dealing with in the OC panel.
Very nice.
Yeah. And then we, of course, have USB BIOS flashback because the ROG boards, not all of them, but some of them will feature a dual BIOS design, truly independent of each other, where you can run independent ROMs as opposed to it just being a quote-unquote backup ROM.
Okay.
And in this respect, if you need to maybe recover one of them, even though the board features, you know, USB BIOS flashback, you can go ahead and recover from one ROM to the other using the BIOS flashback tool, where you can go ahead and write it from one to the other.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, and so that covers some of the exclusive options that we have on the ROG boards versus the huge set of new options that we've introduced that are going to be persistent across all the other boards.
Excellent. So there's a look at both of the different UEFI options currently available for the Z87 series. And as JJ mentioned, ASUS is always extremely dedicated to coming back, providing many, many updates over the lifespan of the board. So we're going to be seeing updates here, enhancements of functionality, like you were mentioning, additional memory profiles plugged in and that sort of thing. Yeah, I think that wraps it up. So thanks again, JJ, for stopping by and sharing all this information with us.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to all you guys for watching. Of course, if you'd like to see additional videos about the Z87 series, those are all available on our Newegg TV YouTube channel. We've been taking a look at the ROG as well as the mainstream line of UEFI systems, which would also apply to just about everything but the ROG series on the Z87 platform. And yeah, if you guys would like to see more, check out our Newegg TV YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like the video. We'll see you all next time.